Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining me for this second session when I'm talking about the mind and getting you ready for a fabulous 2025. Um, if you were with me last evening, we were talking about reprogramming your habits, and tonight I'm going to talk about the rules of the mind, the seven, in actual fact, quite conveniently, seven magic number rules of the mind which when you start to understand them, it's easier to go towards the goals that apparently you wish to go towards. It's easier to accept what is going on inside of you rather than rebelling or struggling against it. It's easier to observe yourself, to sit with your thoughts rather than to fight against it. It's easier to start accepting and resolving conflicts. So I think it's very important to look at these rules of the mind. Now, obviously, there are a multitude of rules of the mind. I'm focusing upon ones here which are very, very important from a change agent perspective. Okay, so if there's something about your life that you wish to change, it's very, very important that you understand these rules of the mind in order to get on your side. Yeah. So as I say, there are seven of these, and we'll go through them one by one. Yeah. So this is, again, just like last night, it's going to be a very practical session. I will not be offering you a hypnotic induction. You might wish to keep notes, and but if you endeavour to play with these concepts, it will make change an easier process. Let's say you're utilizing your strengths rather than being ignorant of them, let's say. Yeah. So number one, then, the mind and body are one and the same thing. Before I embarked upon this journey, I used to think from a position of Lord knows what you would call it, arrogance, that I was a mind being transported by a body, as if the body was just kind of like the train, and everything was going on up here. It's quite helpful sometimes to um, story tell to yourself to create a label of mind and body. But every thought, every idea causes a physical reaction. And similarly, a physical reaction, if it comes up to consciousness, is going to trigger a thought process. Yeah. This is especially the case when there are thoughts which have a strong emotional attachment. Basically what I'm saying is we are a mind inside a body. The two are one. And our thoughts will impact our body and our body will impact our thoughts. So what? Right? Why does that matter? Okay. Ultimately, emotionally induced symptoms. So thoughts that create a physical reaction will tend to cause organic change if we persist in them long enough. Okay, so scientifically, depending upon who you ask, at least a third, and I've seen estimates going out all the way to about 70% of all human ailments, are what is known as functional rather than organic. They serve a function, they are of the mind. And now I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to say more about it than that. It doesn't mean that every person who complains of an ailment is emotionally ill or neurotic. Let's not go down that route. But what I'm saying is just remember that we are a mind inside a body, and the two cannot be separated. They are very much inextricably linked, combined. They are one. Um, I've kind of given up with the idea of talking about the mind as a separate thing, even though metaphorically and it can be useful from a storytelling perspective. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, what we expect tends to be realized. I'm not a fan of manifestation as a concept because I think it's a delusion. I think the idea of manifestation kind of absolves us of our agency, of our personal responsibility, let's say. If you just think about it enough, then it might come true, sort of thing. I don't buy into that. But I do think that what we expect tends to be realized because our mental expectancy drives our beliefs, right? It creates a belief inside of us. Positive mental expectancy is going to create a belief that we deserve to be successful, for example. And so as a result of that, we are far, far more likely to take the corresponding actions that will make us successful. So what we expect tends to be realized because we will take actions in accordance with our expectation, is what I'm saying. Okay. It doesn't matter if that expectation is coming from inside us or from the external world. This is why advertising sucks up so much money, okay? Because the mental imagery formed creates a blueprint inside of our mind, and our mind is a goal-driven organism. Once we have that blueprint, we will go to the ends of the earth to carry out the plan. Yeah. So it's very, very important to analyze your expectations. What is it that you believe? You can go as far as to go back to what I was saying before about our physical health. Look at placebos, look at the placebo effect. Depending on the drug, it's 2/3 of the drug's efficacy can be determined by our expectation of whether we expect the drug to work or not. You can look at other things, um, the amount of stress which our body takes, the mental, the physical tightness in our muscles, for example, psychosomatic illnesses, the will to live. You can go in many, many ways, but what we expect tends to be realized. Let's leave it at that. So consider your expectations very well, and what are the beliefs that underpin that. Number 3, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, your imagination is very, very powerful. Your imagination is actually more powerful than knowledge or willpower. And we can see this all around. We can see this as the power of the internet has expanded the way that there are waves of ideas that get transmitted to people that overrule the knowledge that they were sure of. So what? So what? When your imagination and your reason conflict, your imagination always wins. When your imagination and your willpower are in conflict, your imagination always wins. So you need to learn how to get your imagination on your side. Yeah, and this is something that you can do with practice. You also, from the other kind of perspective, is to learn when your imagination is being dragged away by others, by manipulation, by advertising, by suggestion. When is your imagination being conjured? And is that in your best interest? If it's come from outside of you, consider the mechanisms that are playing out and whether or not that is in your best interest, because your imagination tends to overrule reason, knowledge, and willpower. Okay. Number 4, opposing ideas. It's very, very hard indeed for an individual to maintain opposing ideas at the same time. I'm not saying it's impossible. Depends upon your perspective, right? We have, as a human being, we have a need to remain internally consistent, to be able to justify ourselves, to be able to explain ourselves. That need to be congruent is strong. Okay. Now, personally, I've reached the point where I've kind of decided that I'm not a mechanism, I'm an organism, and organisms are capable of conflicting ideas. And those conflicting ideas can potentially both be true at the same time. So if you can hold conflicting ideas without struggling against them, then you'll be fine. But where there is conflict and you resist that conflict, when you struggle against it, when you know that there are two things and they're pulling in different directions, then the energy that you are expending in maintaining a sort of an internal cohesion, an internal balance, it's going to impact your nervous system. It can be tremendously strong. You can eventually get to the point of burnout. So imagine like a mobile. I'm not sure if it's called a mobile everywhere in the world, but something which is hanging from the ceiling, and there's like a bar across, and then there's a whole variety of little toys or things, and maybe there's a few bars in different directions, and somehow or other the thing has found a state of balance. Yeah. Now that balance can be with little light things, or it can be with vast, vast, weighty things where um, the weight is perfectly counterbalanced against another weight. Yeah. So consider then the amount of effort that you are placing in maintaining an internal imbalance, because the energy involved in maintaining that is being expended by you, that's taking up all the slack. So where you find these conflicts inside of yourself and you are struggling against them, and so you're maintaining a sense of balance by, maybe locking one in a pressure cooker, I don't know, but there's a certain element of watchfulness, let's say, to maintain the balance within inside your system. That at the very least is going to detract from your ability to focus on the things that you are truly wanting to focus on. It may actually kind of give you, brain fog. But in any case, it's going to impact your nervous system. So you're not going to be working at an efficient way. So it's very, very important to reconsider your opposing ideas. That might mean, for example, looking at self-acceptance in a different way, looking at shame, looking at your dark side, looking at your core values, your wants, needs, desires. It's all down to know thyself, I guess, is basically the way that I'm saying. But consider, especially these opposing ideas, because they can drag you into the quicksand. Number 5. We're getting now into the creation of fixed ideas inside of your mind. So consider from developmental theory, when you begin as a baby, your mind is, I don't know if it's a blank mind or if you've picked up things, from hereditary natures, but your mind is relatively clean. Yeah. And with each experience that comes along, you learn, and these learnings go straight in, most of them go into your subconscious. You create a sense of your own understanding, your sense of the rules of the world, your sense of yourself, where you fit in, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. These all fit into a sense of what it is to be you inside that kind of deep enclave of your subconscious mind. And the rule number 5 is, once an idea has been accepted by your subconscious mind, it remains there until it is replaced by another idea. Okay. And moreover, to take that a step further, the longer the idea remains inside your subconscious, the harder it is to extract it and replace it with another idea. Because what happens is, all these ideas inside our subconscious mind, from an imagery perspective, maybe you want to consider that around it you have this critical, judgmental, protective layer. Your critical mind is experiencing anything new, whatever is going on now, in the light of what you already know. And its tendency is that if something comes along which doesn't quite fit with it, it'll flick it away. It'll say, well, that just doesn't work for me. And so you'll tend to maintain what it is that is already inside your subconscious mind. It takes something very strong to shift that. There has to be a really, really strong evidence of something which is completely opposed to whatever is inside your subconscious mind before you'll start to reconsider. So what is the so what, right? The so what is, this is how habits are formed. Thoughts turn to actions which become habituated, that get handed off to the back of your mind, which run on autopilot. We have habits of thinking as well as habits of doing, but the thought always comes first. So question your thoughts. If you want to change your actions, you have to first change your thoughts. So you have to first become aware of your thoughts, and you have to ask, is this in my best interest? Is this sending me in the direction that I choose to go? Question your thoughts, question your beliefs. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, nearly there. Okay, number 6 is kind of similar to number 5. 6 is all talking about the compounding of suggestion. A suggestion acted upon creates less opposition to the next suggestion. I don't know if you've heard about the yes set. So if you ask someone a series of questions, and you start off with a question which is patently obvious, and they will mentally or literally say yes. And then you ask another question and they say yes. And you ask another question and they say yes. And you ask another question and they say yes. By the time they've answered 6 or 7 times yes, you can then ask them quite a provocative question. And the tendency will continue to be to maintain consistency with how they should be, and say yes. Yeah. Use that, get that on your side. So if you wish to influence your thoughts, given that thoughts dictate actions, start with very simple suggestions and then work up from that, because each subsequent suggestion will build upon the prior suggestion. In actual fact, it's like a sort of a logarithmic scale. So in actual fact, if I start off, let's go with Emile Coué's every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. And I accept that suggestion. And then I tell myself another suggestion. I am an extension of the universe and I am grateful for the experiences that come towards me. Well, not only do I accept that suggestion in the light of the prior suggestion, but I actually reinforce and compound the first suggestion. And then I go to a third suggestion and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth. And you end up with this kind of sliding scale where the initial suggestions, because they were relatively easy to chunk down, they become more and more weighty. And the other ones start to increase in efficacy over time. So each suggestion compounds the prior suggestions, and each suggestion then creates less opposition to the next suggestion. Use that on yourself. Start with simple suggestions and build upon it and build upon it and build upon it. Yeah. You can also use that in actual fact in the way that you're talking with other people if you wish to influence them. It's quite a useful thing. You'll notice this in sales patter, for example. Okay, number 7. Final magic rule. The greater, this is the law of subconscious effect, the greater the amount of conscious effort that you place in something, the less room there is for a subconscious response. The easiest way that you can conceptualize this is when you try very hard to go to sleep. The harder you try to go to sleep, you actually get in the way of going to sleep. You can't force yourself to go to sleep. You allow sleep to occur. Similarly, if you've got someone's name, you just can't remember it. It's stuck. It's on the tip of your tongue. Okay, trying harder and harder to remember the name doesn't tend to work. But if you let it go, a little while later, it'll just appear in your mind, and it's there it was. Yeah. So the harder you try, the less something tends to work. So the so what is, in order to be creative, for example, in order to create or come up with new ideas. Give yourself a break, take it easy. You're probably going to need some element of positive mental expectancy in order to take it easy. You're going to understand that there is a problem-solving mechanism which runs on autopilot at the back of your mind. And if you just release your thoughts and let that part work, then it'll come up with some extraordinary ideas. Something like that. Yeah, you learn to let things happen rather than forcing them to happen. That doesn't mean that you just kind of leave your will by the roadside and let life take over. You can have a sense of intention, but having set the intention, don't 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 trap that goal too tightly, let's say. Give it the freedom to breathe. That's it. There are my seven thoughts of the mind, 7 rules of the mind. There's one which I guess is always worth conjuring with, is that the word? Which is to identify your subconscious mind when it's speaking. So the subconscious mind, when it speaks, it always speaks quietly. It always speaks honestly. It always speaks the truth. It tends to be the one that speaks first. And here's the crucial one. You tend to wish to edit it. Yeah. So a thought comes up. It tends to be rather quiet. It tends to be brutally honest. And you tend to think, well, that can't be right. Sometimes it's confusing, it might not be a linear thought. It might be a metaphorical thought. It's a bit like a dream sort of thing. It might feel like you're making it up. Yeah, it's like, where on earth did that come from, sort of thing. When these thoughts come up very, very quietly, these are gold dust, right? So pay attention to that. So if when you're going through any of that list that I was talking about, little voice speaks, Pay attention to that. Okay, that's all I want to talk about tonight. Thank you for watching. I hope it's of use. We're going to get on tomorrow night to the rules of suggestion. So we'll be very, very specific about the rules of suggestion, because then you can get that on your mind, on your side. And the more that you can do that, then the easier it is to make the changes that you want in your life in order to have a fantastic 2025 and infinitum. All right, thank you very much for watching. I hope that's of interest. I didn't see any questions, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the comments down below, and I'll hope to see you tomorrow evening. All right, cheers.